I usually let my spirit speak. Having been an engineer for almost 35 years, ever since the time I got into an engineering college, the world view in engineering is very different. It's an applied science. That means you take the aspects of science and apply them for practical use. So there is no room for abstract in engineering. Everything has to be measurable, quantifiable. You can approximate. Even infinity can be approximated, so long as it is used for practical uses. So presentations in engineering field are a unique experience. And usually somebody will tell me to make a presentation, prepare one, and I'll make about 40 to 50 slides. And then once I know what I want to present, it doesn't go right away. It's going to be reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. Dots, bullets, everything changed, data sheets added. Basically, the presentation is all about answering questions. What if he asked this question? What if he asked the other question? So you're constantly preparing, psyching yourself. And then by the time it is all approved, there's probably 5% of what you started with. So you feel like a caged monkey being just let out to perform acrobatics and then put back into the cage. Whereas this is a spiritual talk. Spirit is free. It doesn't like to be confined. It will just float like a leaf in a stream. It knows exactly what to speak, when to say it, what to say it. I'm just going to let it do the job. It also knows how long the duration is, so it will do a nice job. Before I go on to talking about the book and the topic itself, something tells me the Spirit says that people want to hear something other than the book. So I will be addressing the book, but I will also clarify something, because we all have questions. We always come with questions. Sometimes we don't find answers to them right away. And they emerge in meetings like this or through a book or a presentation. So you may discover something as I'm going through. The other thing is, I have looked at spiritualism. I have been proud as an engineer, basically putting down all these things for a long time. I didn't believe any of this, but it was a learning experience. And basically at some point I started dabbling with metaphysics, because I believe that your mind is like a parachute. It works when it's open. So it's important to look on the other side of the river always. We always get stuck to one side of the river, and we need to see what is on the other side. Why are people going to temples? Why are people doing rituals? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? And India is a multicultural society. You have sizable number of Christians, Muslims, Buddhists. You have everybody. It's a salad bowl. And when you are following your tradition, somebody else is following something else, which is exact opposite of what you are doing. And as a person growing up in that, it's very confusing. So taking a refuge in the engineering field was kind of a security blanket. I didn't have to deal with any of that. But then life brings it to you. All your inclinations and everything that you have built up, you have become unaware of it after time. And then suddenly they begin to open up. And this book is a culmination of such an experience. This is not my life history or anything. These are the questions I used to ask. I used to ask questions and would not find an answer, because people who are following traditions didn't know. They said it's just that we follow, and you can teach that to your children, and that's how everything is propagated. You are not to question anything. But the conscious mind doesn't let go of that. It wants to be convinced. How can you say there's a God here doing this and this? Is he here? Why are people stealing from temples and God is doing nothing about them? What about the wars and calamities that are happening? How come no God came to save people, whereas in the mythology it says God came with his weapon to save? Those questions nobody could answer. And I forgot about those questions as time went on. Life takes you through very interesting journey. Life is your teacher. Life is your guru. Your experience is your guru. He is the people are searching for guru outside without realizing the guru is within you. And the guru knows your limitations, your inclinations, knows everything. And when the time is right, the answers emerge. And through those answers, I began to understand a lot of things. When the answer comes, it is profound, it hits you hard, and the answer is complete. And that's called understanding. When you understand it, then you remember the question. Sometimes the question has been asked 30 years ago. You remember the question. I asked this question to others, but at the same time, the same question got asked to me, myself, and I didn't realize that. Something inside was listening. It just waited for me to mature. You have to learn through your own experience, otherwise you will not believe anything. Every reality that you say or see around you, you are not convinced of it until you have experienced it yourself. The moon doesn't exist for a person born blind. You can try to convince him as much as you want about the beauty of the moon. He hasn't sensed it, so he's not going to be convinced by you. Right? That's how the world is. So we live in a sense-based existence. 5 senses and a mind to go with it. Senses bring the information and the mind interprets it. And the interpretation keeps on changing based on what you are being exposed to. And as a result, we lose ourselves over time. Remember this, senses can sense anything only if there's a contrast. Contrast is the most important thing. If it is blinding brightness, you're going to see nothing. If it is pitch darkness, again you're going to see nothing. You need a shade of gray or something so that you can detect. Scientists are pointing telescopes into the sky. There are a lot of planets floating around. They cannot see them because nothing is coming out of them. They are there going at hundreds of thousands of miles per hour. They sometimes spot them because it went in front of another star. So from there they can figure it out. So until you saw it, it doesn't exist. Right? So sense-based existence, everything works on a relativistic framework. 2000 degrees, which can melt steel, is cold compared to 10,000 degrees on a star, on the surface of a star. Minus 40 degrees is hot compared to minus 250 degrees on Pluto. Right? So we know it's all relativistic, and in this relativistic dimension we are existing. The other side of the river looks green always from that perspective. If you manage to go to the other side, this side of the river looks green. So we are constantly going back and forth without realizing. If you get into the middle of the river and took a look at both sides, they will appear equally green. But we are scared of going to the middle because we may drown in it. And that's not real. We need something solid and some kind of a surface to stand on, so we feel safe being on one side. And that brings us the realm of dualism, duality, in which there is daylight, there is night, there is good, there is evil, there is darkness, there is light, there is us, there is them. And so we divide ourselves continuously, and scientists call it the state of entropy, to keep on dividing. And we don't understand why we keep on dividing. Some sage comes and founds a system, it works for everybody. Then the sage leaves. 100 years later, there are 2 factions. Then 200 years later, there are 4 factions. And at 2000 years later, there are countless number of factions, each one claiming the others are wrong. And that is, we call it human nature. That is not human nature. There is something that has gone wrong, and there is no awareness of it. And it is not true just in one culture or anything, it is true throughout the world. Wherever you go to the spiritual place, people from a distance say, that side is very spiritual. India is a very spiritual place. Looks very green from here. And you go there, you find chaos and corruption and all these things, and it just puts you off. And you don't know why you came here, because the other side now looks green. Right? So I have been in both parts of the world equal time. And so as a result, I have a very good perspective of it. I just want to tell you about a movie that I saw a few years ago. It's called Bourne Identity. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. Jason Bourne suddenly wakes up and finds himself completely lost. He doesn't know who he is. He's got some identities and everything. He has no idea why he is there, what he is doing. And it's a scary thought. If you wake up one morning and you cannot tell who you are, that's a really scary thought. You will be in speech therapy or some kind of therapy after that. And Jason suddenly finds that there are some identities and telephone numbers. He starts tracing his way back, and suddenly somebody attacks him. And he doesn't know why they are attacking him. So he realizes he's got all the skills to defend himself. He acts like an agent. He doesn't know whose agent he is. And then slowly the story goes on, and he traces his way back to find out who he was and what happened to him. Right? Think of it. Most of us are Jason Bournes. We won't realize where we are. They make movies. There was a movie called Total Recall, where there's a construction worker just does work, goes home, and he's very happy with his wife. One day he makes a mistake of going to a video arcade. They put this helmet on his head, and they crank up the machine, and then he goes through this experience where he starts seeing things that he doesn't know. They don't look real to him. He screams, comes out of it. Then he goes and tells his wife, of all people, that I saw this. I saw myself as a rebellion leader. And she starts attacking him. People come to attack him. He doesn't know why they are attacking him. And then the story goes on, and he discovers that he was once a rebel leader. And those in power caught him and basically deprogrammed his brain completely and made him into a construction worker and threw him there. And so now he doesn't know what he's doing. There was another movie called Memento. Same thing. I like these kind of movies for a simple reason. Movies are great for cinematography, acting and everything. There is a spiritual experience in everything. I can tell whoever wrote that story, his spirit is expressing the same question. Who am I? How come I ended up here? What am I trying to do? And he expresses it in the form of a story and as a movie. And we go there, we see the entertainment, we walk away from it. Very rarely we see the essence of what is being said over there. So I like movies like Inception. Same thing. It is a spiritual quest within whoever that is, who has created this magnificent movie, and we get entertained by it. Very rarely people see the kernel of it. We all just see the sweet fruit and throw the seed away. The seed contains a secret, and we have to go after that. Right? So it is the same thing, whether you have movies or not, it's the same quest. Everybody is projecting. Somebody writes a poem, somebody does a painting, somebody does something else. They are all answering the same question in their own ways. So I decided that I need to find out what I am doing. I felt like Jason Bourne one day, and basically I said, what am I doing? Right? I'm going to work, commuting, and somebody's yelling at me, I do my job, I come back. And then on the way back, I'm tired, I just go to sleep. So I've become like a robot, and I've been doing this. I did this PhD just for this, just to go and come back, and 24 hours a day. That's not life. But the image of that from the other side of the room was that you have a car, you have a house, you got air conditioning, 24 hours power supply and all that. I don't think of any of them. The mind is still asking the same question, what am I doing? When you start asking a question like that, it is the moment of awakening. It has been waiting for you to say that question. So something triggered in me. It said, I made a trip to India, and I just went on a tourist bus. They took me to this temple. And I looked at them and my jaw dropped because I had not heard of these temples before. The intricacy of the sculpture was so incredible. They were done 850 years ago without using power drills or anything. Right? And if you just saw it, the details will just saturate your mind. So I just took pictures. They hurried me into the bus. I came back. Then I said, I'm not doing justice to this. I have to look at it again. So I started sketching them. And these sketches are the result of that. I began to sketch them. Every detail you could start seeing, the intricacies, and you can basically be there in that time as to what they were thinking. Because they didn't have any blueprint or they didn't have any layout or anything to start like an engineer does. So as an engineer it was mind-boggling. How did you make this temple? And they did over 3 or 4 generations. And nobody cares. If you go there, people are taking pictures and going home. How many people are looking at it like this? So I said, I do justice to this by just drawing it. So I brought them here. These are all sketches from that temple. At least I can do justice to it doing this. And I have a website and everything, and I sell copies of this. This is not a sales pitch, I'm just telling you what it is. My website is called Simha Artworks. Simha means lion. So I like lion. So try to guess my zodiac. So this is, if you go to India, you know Taj Mahal, that's all people know. People go to the metros. Real India does not exist in the metros. you have to go to the hinterlands. And I had the fortune of growing up in the hinterlands. And it's a very different, ancient India still existed. And I will come to that during the presentation. And here is my introduction to the book. The book is titled The Universe Within. And there's a subtitle, The Essence of Hinduism. This book, I would say, is a manifestation. Because in life, if you look back, you have asked a lot of questions and the answers start emerging one by one. When you compile them, you call it a manifestation. I didn't plan to create this book at all. Someday, something said, put it together. There is a difference between creation and manifestation. Creation is a planned event. As an engineer, I understand what creation is. I got to make the next product, so here's the timeline, make the charts, get the resources, make the plans, fill up the updates and reports, and finally the product comes out and you sell it. Right? That is creation. And we create. We want to make a statue. You can decide. You can go buy the materials, start making a statue. This is a creation because I can go create one. Manifestation is a result. It is not a planned event. You don't know what is going to manifest. Something just emerges. Every baby being born is a manifestation because you cannot tell how it's going to look. 50 years ago, you could not even tell the gender of the baby, and you don't even know what it's going to do. Whether it's going to be talented, whether it's going to have issues, we have no idea. We are just manifesting the children. They are the product of love, and that's why they manifest. So there is a clear difference between creation and manifestation. In India, the gods don't say they created the world. They always say, this God manifested this at will. Whenever you pray to the God, things get manifested. I never understood the meaning of that for a long time. Now I understand through this experience because the book emerged. And I love wearing many hats. So somehow, whatever curiosity I had, the leaf started traveling in a direction. It took me into hypnosis. I became a hypnotherapist in addition to being an engineer and doing this. It's interesting. It takes you because you have been asking a question. The only way you know the answer is by going through some experience. I used to have a really doubtful view about hypnosis. I said, I don't want to be under control of somebody. And then I understood that's not the case at all. It's totally different. And I learned the power of the subconscious mind. I didn't realize, I used to hear the term called subconscious mind, Sigmund Freud or somebody talked about it. It's what psychologists worry about. Didn't realize the subconscious mind is the one listening to your questions all the time. It is observing every experience and it knows exactly when you are ready to receive an answer and brings the answer to you. And this book is a manifestation of my subconscious mind working because it wrote the book. I would never say I wrote this book because the way it wrote the book is very interesting. I will be driving and suddenly there will be a burst of idea out of the blue. I have to pull over somewhere and take it down. It's like a dream. If you let go of it, it's gone. It's disappeared. And so I started collecting this. I said, who is giving me this information? It's very interesting, right? How does it all come? I kept on collecting it and compiling it. One day something said, you're not done. I just looked at what it wrote. And it was interesting. There was a continuity. It was telling me the story of how I had observed everything and how I understood the whole thing. It's like, you take a picture of a mountain. You go on Three Sisters, there are a lot of photographers taking the pictures. Every photograph is unique in its own way. Right? Beautiful. There are a lot of books on Hinduism. What is unique about this? It's got its own uniqueness in the sense, every photograph is an inner experience of the photographer. Sometimes they will walk around with a tripod stand and camera and they will see something and they will think, if this scene, the sun is setting from this side and if there is a plant in the front, it will look very beautiful. They have already seen the scene before it happened even. And someday as they are walking, they see that. And they put a camera and just take shots of it, burn films, and it comes out spectacular. They saw the image of that even before it happened. That is a spiritual experience. So that's a unique view. Every photographer's view of the same mountain is a unique view. Same thing, my view of whatever I call as Hinduism is my own unique view. By taking the unique views of different people, you get to understand, and there is a unique view in you that develops. Something resonates as you read it or as you hear it, and that resonance answers some more questions and raises some more questions from that, and the quest continues on. And this is a very, very interesting spiritual experience. And I said, I'm going to go with it. Just plunge into it. I now feel like somebody who just died from 20,000 feet. And I know the parachute will open at some point, but right now I'm going to enjoy the free fall. When you fall free, initially you may fear. You fall a few times, fear goes away. So people go and do skydiving or bungee jumping. Why are they doing that? That's because their spirit wants to experience that freedom for a short moment. In that moment they can forget about everything, and it is very risky. The parachute doesn't open. It's a risky thing, but they are willing to risk it because near-death experience is the one that will really awaken you. Right? You cannot do anything. There's no help for you. In that state, you really become very spiritual. That's what it's triggering to do. There are people, Smith rocks, they are climbing, sometimes by hands. If you make one mistake, you know what happens to you, but they want to do that because the rope climbing is not thrilling to them anymore. Thrill seeker, every thrill seeker is a spiritualist. Inside, they don't know that they are spiritual. They are trying to seek thrill. Something is driving everybody for the same reason. So coming to the world of dualism, let me come back there. Dualism seems very real to us, isn't it? When we look at the world, there are clearly defined things. We need reference frames. We need to orient ourselves all the time. Our eyes are open. We need to find a place. If I have to come to this church, it has a street address, it's got a Google map, it's got zip code, it's got everything so I can reach here. And if you don't have any of that, you've got at least latitude and longitude. Imagine something with no address. How scary would that be? Of course, the county tax people will not like it. But that reality nobody wants to admit anymore. So, losing the identity has become a scary thing for us. In a dualistic world, we know practical things are there. We're very comfortable with everything. Whatever the senses brings, we are very comfortable. But we are scared of darkness. A lot of people are really scared of darkness. They like a little light here and there because the sense will not work in darkness. If you get lost in a forest, you're going to see illusions and scare yourself. You may bump into a tree and lose your consciousness, right? People are scared of death because it's a big unknown. What happens after death? People are dying thinking about it already, right? There are a lot of things that scare us. In that fear, sometimes we turn into monsters. We don't realize that every monster there is really afraid. So it preemptively attacks you in order to protect itself. Whether it is human or animal, it doesn't matter. A snake will not bite you if it is not afraid of it. Right? Fear happens. How does fear happen? Where did we build all this? Right? When you are a baby, think about that time. I used to watch my children. I have 2 children. And they are all grown up now. And when they were babies, as an engineer, I was always curious because your own babies you get to watch and nobody has an objection. I used to call out my daughter's name when she was 4 months old. She will just react to it like a sound. You can make any other sound, she will respond. By the time she was 7 months old, if I called out by her name, she turned around. And same thing with my son. In a crowd of other kids, if I call her name or his name, they will turn around. First time association with the name happens. The child knows that this name is me. I am distinctly being called by that name, which is nice. Because now you have one identity. Before that, there was no identity. Everything was a doll. If you showed your face, the baby thinks it's a doll, ready to be grabbed by hands and legs and brought close to the face. That's all it thinks. Everything's a doll around it. That stage starts changing at that point. We give names for a practical reason, of course. And then it builds on, one by one. We add layers and layers. Are you immunized? And then we fill up a form in a doctor's office or someplace. You've got this many questions about you. Your first name, your last name, your middle name, your date of birth, your social security number, your group insurance number, this number, that number. Are you married? Are you single? Are you divorced? How many children do you have? Do you have this problem? Do you have that problem? So you're basically characterizing you. You feel very depressed by the end of it. All this is you? Probably not. You are still don't know who you are. Right? But you have to describe all this about you so that you can be distinctly placed as a unique person. Then they take your fingerprints, your iris, your denture, identity after identity. There's nothing wrong with that. Identities are fine. They are for a practical reason. But that is a problem. In 1947, India got its independence from the British Empire. The British identity was ruling over the Indian identity. So Indians said, no, we don't want to be your slaves. So the British said, all right, they gave them independence. So the Muslim community in India said, no. Now we are all Indians, but they are Hindus who are a majority. We cannot be under the rule of Hindus, so give us a separate country. They said, all right, you have Pakistan. So they created Pakistan. Practical reason. If you feel insecure, feel threatened by somebody, if you want to keep your identity safe, keep it. But close to 1 million people died in the bargain. And many millions lost everything, lost their parents, abandoned. Not only that, 67 years later, they've got 150 nuclear missiles pointed at each other. Is this for a practical reason? Let's think about it. How did that happen? Right? People are, 3 generations have come, the hatred has only increased. Doubt and... So people are really, you just don't know tomorrow you'll be alive or not because somebody can accidentally launch a missile and trigger a nuclear war. Right? Not only that, Pakistan was now created for safeguarding Muslims. They split in 1970 because there was a linguistic majority group which basically dominated the others, and the linguistic minority said, no, we don't want to be dominated by you. So they fought each other. Another 1 million people died in that. Another 10 million refugees later, Bangladesh was born. And generation after generation, all these memories are being propagated. Yugoslavia tore apart, not because of today's war. If you look back in history, 500, 600 years ago, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Turks fought each other. That war is still being fought today by the Serbs and the Bosnians and everybody. The Crusades are still going on in different names, right? If identity is for a practical reason, why are we fighting each other? When I left India for higher studies here, India was already in a mess. Terrorism was going on. So every airport, you reach 4 hours earlier, they will check everything on you. And it was disgusting. I got into the flight and I came here, and in the 1980s, right, I used to write home, Ma, look at this. I can walk up to the terminal in the United States. Free country. Look at our country, what has happened to us. Right? In 2001, it all changed. Now you cannot even trust your shoes. People are looking at everything. In a flight, I was sitting in a flight, and the flight was 5 hours, it was boring, so I started writing a mantra. Of course, I wrote it in Sanskrit script. And there was a lady sitting right next to me, and she was getting slowly uncomfortable. At some point, she politely asked, excuse me, may I know what you are doing? I said, this is a mantra that I write so that everybody in this plane can safely land and go home. And I said a sigh of relief, thank God. And she said, I was going to call the pilot and the marshal because I don't know what you were doing. And I said, that's all right, I understand your fear and I don't blame you for it, but I explained to you, this is for your welfare and well-being. She said, thank you. She said, I work for the Homeland Security, so I had to do what I had to do, right? And I realized, wow, identities have come this far. If your identities for practical reasons, why does it hurt you? Think about it. If you are walking by in your office and in one of the cubicles somebody mentions your name, you're going to immediately turn on your antennas. What are they talking about me? Right? Is it something they're going to fire me or what are they going to do? You get immediately anxious about it. It's your name. How does it matter? Somebody else could have your name. It doesn't matter, right? And people start insulting. Now people are blowing each other up in the name of whatever identity that is. Right? How did this happen? What happened here? Why this disconnect? For a practical thing, say we got borders now, we got fences now built. People have got homes and they've got security, home security, they've got all kinds of things, guns inside the houses, because the fear has increased. Why? Why fear? How did fear happen? Right? So this is an interesting question. How did this come about? Let me tell you a story. In 1930, there was an Englishman named Paul Brunton. I don't know how many of you heard Paul Brunton. I've got his book here, somewhere here. He was an English journalist, and India was under British colonial empire. And he wanted to go to India and meet all these yogis and people who sleep on bed of nails and write a book about them. So he went. And he met a lot of mystics, and he wrote everything on the book. The book is called A Search in Secret India. Very interesting book. And in that, he gets told, hey, if you are looking for a real mystic, come and meet this guy. He's in southern India. He said, I don't have time to meet him in my agenda, I'm sorry. But people kept on saying, hey, you are here. You are here to meet all these fakirs and everybody. This guy is genuine, go see him. He said, all right, I'll go there. So he travels on a train and on a bullock cart and reaches this place. He's a very good writer. So he goes there and he narrates what he does. He just walks into this place and he's all dressed up like me. And he goes there and here is a man in loincloth, mid-30s, walking in there, doesn't pay any attention to him, goes and sits on a pedestal like this. And they got a hall like this, people are sitting on the floor. So somebody says, this is Mr. Paul Brunton, he has come to see you from England. So the guy just looks at him, shows no interest. He says, who is Paul Brunton? So the guy says, what? I am here, this is me, I am Paul Brunton. And the saint looked at him and said, who am I? And this guy thought he's talking to some quack. Why did they bring me here? He said, who am I? This is me, right? The saint paid no attention to him. And he just sat and then he fixed his eyes and then took a deep breath and went into a trance. And then he looked around everybody else, started meditating. He said, let's see what these guys do. So he sat down. And after some time, he closed his eyes and he writes his experience here. I've got that page marked just for you. There is something in this man which holds my attention as steel filings are held by a magnet. I cannot turn my gaze away from him. My initial bewilderment, my perplexity at being totally ignored, slowly fade away as this strange fascination begins to grip me more firmly. But it is not till the second hour of the uncommon scene that I become aware of a silent, resistless change which is taking place within my mind. One by one, the questions which I have prepared in the train with such meticulous accuracy drop away. Questions, I told you, right? Questions come because answers are emerging. For it does not now seem to matter whether they are asked or not. And it does not seem to matter whether I solve the problems which have hitherto troubled me. I know only that a steady river of quietness seems to be flowing near me. That great peace is penetrating the inner reaches of my being. This is a Western guy who had never seen mystics before. And that my thought-tortured brain is beginning to arrive at some rest. And he goes on and on. I surrender myself to the steadily deepening sense of restfulness until 2 hours have passed. The passage of time now provokes no irritation because I feel the chains of mind-made problems are being broken and thrown away. And then, little by little, a new question takes the field of consciousness. This was a direct experience. The saint did nothing. He just sat next to him and asked him, who are you? That's all he did. And it had such a profound effect because this saint is very famous in India. Somerset Maugham, there's a famous English writer. He wrote a book called Razor's Edge. There was even a movie made on that. Somerset Maugham himself visited this saint. And there's a character, main character in that book, which is based on an English disciple of this saint. So Paul Brunton just went to make a short trip. He stayed for 6 months and became his permanent disciple at that point. This master did nothing. He just sat there and said, ask yourself, who am I? There's another conversation that goes on. I'll just read that out. You say, I want to know. Tell me, who is that I? The master asked. What does he mean? He has now cut across the services of an interpreter and speaks directly to me in English. This saint left school when he was in 3rd grade. Studied in mother tongue, doesn't know any English, and he switched into English. And this Englishman was totally startled, right? I am afraid I do not understand your question, says the author. He says, is it not clear? Think again, he says. I puzzle over his words once more. An idea suddenly flashes to my head. I point a finger to myself and mention my name. And he says, do you know him? And the author says, all my life. Then the guru says, but that is only your body. I again ask, who are you? And Paul Brunton just went into meditation after that. And he wrote many books on meditation. It's a very interesting book. So he realized that layers and layers of identity have become like layers of onion, firmly stuck. And if you try to peel those layers one by one, ask me this question, onion retaliates. You know how it retaliates. It hurts. That's what happens to us. We become attached to our own identities, unbeknown to us. We are not even aware that we only realize it when we feel insulted. That's when the defense mechanism comes. I can be somebody criticizing Hinduism itself, arguing with my own people. If somebody on a flight says, aren't you a Hindu? You guys are all, terrorists or something. I'm going to get defensive at that point. No, you are mistaken. That's not how it is. Likewise, people get mistaken for things that they don't believe in. But to an outsider, it doesn't matter. You are on the other side of the river. You all look the same. So that means you should be like this, right? So identity takes over your emotions. When you are so deeply attached to your own identity and you are emotionally defending it, that is called worship. Worship is not praying to some stone statue or an image. That is worship. Worship is something where you identify with so much that you cannot live without it. That is true worship. We are worshipping our bodies. We will not let go. We will fight tooth and nail till the very last breath. We are worshipping our bodies all the time. Nothing wrong in that. We came to live in a body, but we started worshipping the other things around us. Our names, our social security numbers, our nationality. We salute a flag, and if somebody burns the flag, it hurts us. We go to war with somebody without knowing that the person on the other side doesn't even know you. We just shoot them down and they shoot us down. In Vietnam, they had no idea who these people are, and people went and fought each other, a lot of trauma and everything. Why? That's because we became, unbeknown to us, attached to this. We are worshipping. That's called idol worship. An idol doesn't have to be a 3D image. Anything that you identify with, even an atheist is worshipping his belief. An atheist says, I don't believe in any of this. I firmly believe in myself. That's a worship. Because you are defending it, you are fighting others. Every time you fight others to defend something, you are worshipping. You cannot escape from it. And that is because of dualistic referential existence. In Sanskrit, they call it Dvaita. D-W-A-I-T-A. Dvaita. Dvaita means two. You need two eyes, you need two nostrils, two ears, two parts of the brain, two sides to your body. Luckily, just one mouth, or we'll be arguing with ourselves. So that is safe from there. But other than that, everything is two. Because we evolved in a referential system, so we look at everything as two extremes. So when we are in that, everything looks real to us. But the dolls that we have put around ourselves, we become like Russian dolls at some point. The real us is inside somewhere, and these Russian dolls are stuck to us. And we are looking at the world through those Russian dolls. And these sages in India called it Maya, M-A-Y-A. It's not just Mayans here. Maya means illusion. And there are people fighting each other in that. No, this is what they meant. No, that's what they meant. People are fighting and arguing because they're all dolls again. Everybody cannot help becoming a doll. Have you ever thought about it? How did I become a doll? Right? Just think about it. You become a doll when you start defending whatever you are believing in. How did belief come about? When you are a baby, you had none of that. You would smile at anybody and everybody because everybody else is a doll. And as you grow from a baby stage, you have become a doll now, without realizing it. Right? How do you undo this? Why should you undo this in the first place? Because the world is rapidly progressing technologically, so there's more and more dolls are being added, more and more chaos. Young kids are blowing themselves up for reasons they don't even know. They are just indoctrinated and say they are evil, go blow them up. And they do it. and they are promised of heaven. And people are fighting each other in the name of language or whatever, or even 49ers. They will go to war with those who are Pittsburgh, supporters. People are dividing all the time. That is because we don't realize the practical use of our identities. We have become attached to them. And when we are attached to them, we don't even realize this. How do you undo that? Because if you have suddenly become like a baby, it's a scary thought now. Because people would say that you are suffering from some kind of amnesia, they'll take you to a therapist and they'll make you sick. You don't want that. You feel like Jason Bourne, completely disjointed and drugged. You have no idea where you are. Right? So we don't want to go there, but we want that beautiful innocence of a baby. We were born with that. That beautiful innocence turned into blind ignorance as we grew. So we call ourselves in various ways. I call myself spiritualist, an engineer, a hypnotherapist. I don't know which identity is mine. Depending upon who is accusing one of those professions, I'll start defending it. So I fight a multi-pronged war all the time. Sometimes Apple fanboy versus Android guys, various things. People are fighting each other. There's no need for it. How do you undo this? And why should you undo this? That's because the time has come for this. Something is changing in this world, like the spring season starting, in which people are beginning to realize we are being just misled and cheated. And at some point we need to become aware that these are all for practical reasons. And we don't seem to have a way of doing it. We don't realize we are undoing our identities at least once a day. When you go into deep sleep, all the dolls disappear. You don't know what your gender is. You don't know what your age is. You don't know what your nationality is. You may be scared of a snake and you won't even know that it crawled over you. It's a beautiful, pristine state. If you want to live 100 years, you must have slept 33 years of that time in sleep. 1/3 of your lifetime. That's how the calculation goes. We love our sleep, don't we? Why do we love our sleep? It is the seat of our spirit. We keep going back to it. It is just that we cannot carry it with us when we come out. The dualism takes us over right away. As soon as we wake up, the dolls fall on us and we become dolls. So there is no awareness. And how do we do that? How can we be that baby? We were meant to do that. Being a baby, bringing that innocence and just building the awareness, using the identities and maps only for practical use and develop. That way, we have a harmonious world. And that awareness is coming. It's not that. It is happening slowly, one by one. The saint I talked about in southern India was in that awareness. That's why he could wear a loin cloth. People from all over the world will go to see him. The rich, the poor, the man in power, the beggar, everybody will go to him because he had nothing. But he was happy within himself as an adult. We want to do it consciously. It's like learning to speak a language. Right? Initially you are struggling, then it becomes automatic. Once you have become automatic, you are consciously speaking and you are not struggling for it anymore. Car driving, same way you learn to drive a car. Initially the steering, the brake, the gas pedal and everything, it was a monumental task and dad was yelling at you, but still you drove. After some time, you learned, the fear of failure went away. Your subconscious mind, just like skydiving, learned that it's okay. Now you enjoy your drive, you don't even think about driving, you don't even know how you got to your destination. So you can teach yourself subliminally to do the right thing, to be detached from your identities. When you have detachment from your identities, when you are not emotionally defending them, that state is called renunciation. Renunciation is not where you just drop your family. In India, there are guys who will do that. They've got all the creditors zeroing on him and he owes a lot of money. His family, he'll just run away and he'll become a saint. And he's got all this ochre cloth things and beard and he's just disappeared. And so there are a lot of people like that because he has renounced the family, he has nothing to do with it, no debt, nothing. So people escape. That's not renunciation. Renunciation happens here, in your mind, where you are not affected by the artificialness. It is all artificial. And you are aware of it all the time. And the saint that I talked about was a renunciate. He lived in the middle of the people, not in a jungle. So that is symbolized by the lotus. In India, the lotus symbol symbolizes renunciation. The state of renunciation Lotus forms in the mud, muddy water. But not even a droplet of water can touch it. It is always clean. When you look at a pool with lotus, it is the lotus that hits your eyes, not the mud behind it. Every saint in India is like a lotus. That is the real essence of Hinduism. India is a land of saints. Innumerable saints for thousands of years. It has an environment in which these saints emerge again and again. Of course, dolls will surround them, take their teachings and start arguing with each other. So another saint will emerge and the dolls will go to him and say, you are wrong because our guru said this. So this saint will just do the exact opposite and prove them wrong. Then everybody will switch to this guy. So over the years, the different traditions that were brought in by the various saints has become this salad bowl like system that you call as Hinduism. That's why you have so many gods, so many scriptures, so many philosophies, because each one was started by a sage at a time. Sages appeared according, if a sage was here right now, he would use words like laughing out loud and things like that, because he will use Facebook, because his mission is to give you the message. And he will use whatever contemporary language is there to reach out to you. There's no shameful, he will go on a plane, just because he's a guru, he doesn't have to levitate. He will use whatever is there, but his mission is to help you. So the gurus of the yesteryears have done the same thing. I don't know how many of you know Krishna. There's a God called Krishna. He says in his Bhagavad Gita, every time I keep coming into this world to guide the seekers. And so when they come in there, they understand everything. They understand that we are dolls. Spiritually, we are children. We may be adults physically. Spiritually, all of us never left the preschool. We are still in preschool. That's why we dolls are so favorable to us. We hardly graduated. Many of us got stuck with our own religions and our dogmas and call others evil and whatever that is and fight each other. Children do that in a class before the teacher arrives. Right? So the teacher comes and he understands. If you want to teach a child anything, you cannot sit them down with a stick and teach them anything. You have to play with them because children know only playing. You have to teach mathematics by playing. You have recess, you have storytelling. In stories lie the morals and everything. The children subliminally pick that up. And they sing along, they do all these things, and they have a great time. They look forward to coming to school, and that's how they learn. So the gurus understood that. They said everybody is at different levels of evolution, but the majority are children. Therefore, they said, let them celebrate. Let there be an elephant-headed god. Let there be a mythology filling that. The child on the street will say the story behind that and he will seriously believe in that. That's all right. There is a learning going on subliminally all the time. And we are not declaring that openly. At some point, you are going to awaken and you are going to seek something higher. And the saint will deal with you accordingly. If you are a philosopher, he will talk philosophy to you. If you are an intellectual, he will talk scriptures to you. If you are a child, he will tell you to break a coconut. If you are somewhere in between, he will say, go on a pilgrimage. So various guidances will come, and when these saints die, they don't really die, they say they left their bodies. Usually people revere these people, they bury them. They plant a tree on top of it, or they build a temple. So you go to any town, any village in India, you will find temples. And there's a story behind every stage, and they are all connected by mythology. The learning, the teaching is the same. It is not old wine in a new bottle. It is eternal truth. Eternal truth cannot be old. It is always ever new. And they always teach this. This is something not apparent. I grew up as a child there, and I ran through the temples, these beautiful temples. I run through them, never cared about any of that, but my subconscious mind was absorbing everything. Questions came, the answers didn't come right away. So I had to go through this journey of everything, and then finally I arrived at this, and now I understand this is how teaching is done. This is how you teach. You don't force people. It has to be out of your own free will. It has to be based on your inclination. So India, whatever you call as Hinduism, is like a spiritual super grocery store. You walk into a grocery store, you don't buy everything there. The store owner would love you to do that, but you don't do that. You go, if you are a vegan, you go buy vegan stuff. If you are loving, if you're craving for sugar, you go buy cakes and everything. Somebody buys Cokes and Pepsi, somebody buys cigarette. Everybody is free to buy what they want, right? It's a store. You get to pick. Nobody can force you. Today your weight is this much. You can only get here this much. You don't do that. People are learning on their own terms. So therefore, I'm sorry. So I will just, I can go on and on. So I think the parachute opened. So I'm going to land safely here. And I really appreciate all of you giving your time here. I appreciate Mary and the spiritual community I can come here and talk on many other topics. Each sketch I can talk for 2 hours. Because as you do, there is so much behind it, so much truth behind it. It's all hidden. So you have to go discover it yourself. If somebody else explains to you, it may probably take 10% of that. You still have to discover it yourself. And the world is rich because of that. I'm very happy that I'm able to connect with all of you. I told you, thank you for coming back into my life. That's because you called me here. Your spirit called me here. That's why I'm here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. So I appreciate that. We are always connected. My email address is there. I've got my business card and everything there. Stay in touch. We will always communicate. And if there are any questions, I can take a few questions.
Thank you so much for speaking. It was fascinating, absolutely wonderful. I have a Nook. Is your book, do you have it in digital format?
Yes, it's on Amazon and Kindle, and it's on Barnes and Nobles.
Thank you.
Just type my name. Yeah, I just have to type my name, Partha Rajagopal,
Awesome.
and it'll bring you the book.
And you kept saying doll, your dolls?
Dolls, D-O-L-L.
D-O-L-L?
Doll.
Oh, dog.
Doll. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Did you hear something else?
Dolls.
Like a Russian.
Russian doll. Layers and layers of Russian dolls. That's what it is. Like dancing dolls.
There's pieces inside.
Each one. So layer of identities. If there are any questions that I cannot answer, you are already asked that yourself. Your subconscious will find an answer for it. Trust me that. Thank you.
I think you hypnotized me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.